Hi everyone, back to Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with my rant stroke thought of the day, and it's all about our mates in the media. Yes, strap in, because we're about to do a bit of media marvels and also a little bit of a guest star appearance from a media muppet. So the main one I'm going to talk about first of all, you've seen it all doing the rounds, Gary Neville. Now, I did criticise Sky about their bias towards Liverpool and Manchester United. Certainly, again, at the weekend we saw Spurs and Newcastle were playing prior. It was all about Liverpool and Manchester United. I know that's a huge game in English football and it's got heritage and all that other stuff, but there was no Newcastle United representation there or Spurs representation really, which again is poor by Sky. But that's by the by in terms of this particular video. I'm going to talk about what Gary Neville said about Newcastle United and about PSR in particular. Now, this has been horrendous, really, a transfer window for Newcastle. We'd want to forget. We've got the richest owners in the world, but we can't spend any money. And now the media are talking a lot more about that and shining a bit more of a spotlight on that. Some for the good, in the case of Gary Neville, some for the not so good, in the case of the other idiots I'm going to talk about in a minute. But going back to Neville in particular, so what Neville said was PSR was never designed for clubs to sell their best academy players, and that Newcastle United should be able to invest in their team like Manchester City have done before. We can't hold Newcastle United back. We can't keep a thumb on clubs. We are holding Newcastle United back right now, and something needs to change in the next 12 months. And I welcome that kind of discussion from Gary Neville because he's a big voice in football. He's a big voice in football media. And I think what he says does carry a bit of weight, and it does get a bit of spotlight and a bit of coverage as well. So I think it's all good that Gary Neville has come out and talked about the PSR situation. His already hygienic friend obviously used the opportunity to try and tout Eddie Howe for the England job. If you ever wanted a hype man, Eddie, Jamie Carragher is your fucking man, to be fair. But going back to Gary Neville, I thought it was brilliant for him to say that. It really was. Newcastle are really being punished. I did agree when Carragher said the money's come at the wrong time. He's probably right. The money has come at the wrong time. If Newcastle had had the Saudi takeover back before PSR and FFP, who the fuck knows will be playing for us right now? We could be running away with the league. We could be in the semi-finals of the Champions League against Real Madrid for all we know. But that wasn't the case. So it was almost like you won the lottery, but then you weren't allowed to spend the millions that you won. Really, that's exactly what this feels like as a Newcastle United fan. You look at teams like West Ham, you know, and teams like Aston Villa, they had to sell their prize asset, a player that they probably wanted to build their team around in the shape of Declan Rice or West Ham and Jack Grealish for Villa, just to be able to spend in the market. You know, and in Villa's case, they've invested that money really well and they got the Champions League. But, you know, in West Ham's case, you know, will they get to the dizzying heights that they really wanted to get if Declan Rice had been their team? You just don't know. And it's so sad that teams are having to be in this situation, especially when they've got wealthy owners. As Gary Neville said, surely there is a time now for the owners to say, we will invest and we will put in a pot of money to protect the club if they go bust, because that's what PSR and FFP is supposed to be about. It's about sustainability. If your owners are willing to put in an emergency bailout pot in case the club falls into financial difficulty that will pay all of the overheads and the costs that the club accumulates, and why the fuck can't that be put in place by the Premier League? We know what PSR was designed to do. It was designed to protect the greedy six, the same greedy six who wanted to fuck off in the Premier League and start up the Super League. And the Premier League have just protected them even further. When the Saudi takeover happened, you saw how much they shit their pants. Liverpool, Spurs in particular. Jurgen Klopp complaining, Daniel Levy complaining to the Premier League that the takeover shouldn't be allowed to happen. We all know that was out there. You know, we don't even know half of the story about that. But I guarantee you, this little club of mini bastards got together with the Premier League over a glass of Chardonnay, probably at a gentleman's club in London, with a fucking Cuban cigar, talking about why Newcastle United shouldn't be allowed to be bought by the Saudi Arabians. They couldn't stop it. There wasn't enough legalities to stop it happening. So it went through. We spent well in the transfer market. But Gary Neville even praised us for our approach. And, you know, we have been, you know, kind of progressively improving the team. We haven't gone nuts and went and bought Robinho like City did and all that kind of stuff. We bought really well. We scouted really well. You know, with the shape of Bruno Guimaraes, send Botman for 30-odd million quid each. You know, that's brilliant scouting by the club. I don't know where that scouting's gone now, by the way, in this window. Seems to have fucked off to a town call yesterday. But that's the issue that we have right now. So, you know, other clubs are out there scouting with their scouting networks, investing in their scouting networks, trying to find the players that Newcastle found to stay under the radar of FFP. And now we've finished this other cycle of FFP. We had to sell two brilliant young players, Nelly Anderson and Yankuba Minter, you know, for a combined 70 million quid just to stay above board, really. It doesn't matter that our owners could say there's 70 million quid there. They'd lose that on the back of the fucking sofa. But the Premier League demanded that we sold our players to balance the books, which makes our squad weaker. And it's piss poor, it really is. I'm so glad that someone like Gary Neville has called this out. in the mainstream. And the Premier League really need to sort this shit out, because it isn't just Newcastle. Aston Villa are the same. They're being hampered, even though they've got, very wealthy owners. Chelsea, loophole FC, are just finding ways to fucking take the piss out of this whole setup, because they can fuck around internally, because they've got so much commercial revenue from all the years that Roman Abramovich threw money at it and increase their commercial viability. We're not able to do that because of the situation that we're in, and the handcuffs that are around us. It's making the fans grow restless as well. We're starting to look at the board a lot more than we ever used to. Whether the board are to blame or not, or the regulations are to blame or not, we don't know. I think it's a bit of a smattering of both, really. I think the board could have bought one or two players in this window, especially after weakening the squad. Fuck me, I was getting to the point where I was thinking, just keep Anderson and Minter and fuck the Premier League. They wouldn't have fined you 10 points. You could have haggled them down to 5, probably. I mean, Everton, I think they wanted to do Everton for 10, and that went down to 2 or 3 points in the end. So we probably could have haggled to get a less point deduction, and had a great right winger in the shape of Yankuba Minter and Elliot Anderson in the midfield to boot. But that's all gone away now. No point talking about that shit anymore. But it is fucking horrendous. It really, really is. It needs to change. The Premier League are taking a piss, and they need to sort this out. So that was Gary Neville's take, and that was a media marvel. Massive credit to Gary Neville, and I want more people to talk like that in the mainstream and put pressure on these bastards in the Premier League to do something about this bullshit PSR ruling. Now let's cut across to BN Sports. The Qatari operated and funded BN Sports, by the way, just for a little bit of context there. And our favourite old ex-Sky Sport dynamic duo, hairy hands, chauvinistic wank Richard Keys, and Andy, I love Alan Shearer, to be fair. He'd never stopped talking about Shearer. And Stephen Gerrard, Andy Gray. I don't think Andy Gray's as bad as Keys. It's defamation by association, and unfortunately, mate. But they were talking about the very same topic. And that Jason McAteer in the studio, and Jason McAteer was saying as well, it's a long process. It'll take them a lot longer than did Man City. Then they started to insinuate, well, the Saudis get bored of this and leave the Premier League and leave Newcastle because they're sick of not being able to spend their money. And then the big one was, when will Newcastle ever get to elite club status? And Richard Key says, I'll answer that, never. So you got a crystal ball, have you, Richard? Maybe if you did, you might have thought being chauvinistic about a female assistant referee might cost you a job, you fucking melt. But going back to that, Newcastle United finished in the top 4, a couple of seasons ago. And a lot of people say Champions League is where the elite clubs lie. So you've kind of done your own argument over there, Richard Keys, you stupid prick. That's why you're over there working for them and not over here working for Sky, you fucking knob cheese. But they did speak a little bit of truth. I do think the Saudis will be growing increasingly frustrated about the lack of ability to invest. Jamie Rubin's come out and assured us that the club still have every ambition and aspect to invest in the team and make us world number 1, but at the minute we just can't do this. So something has to give, really, where the Premier League change these rules and allow owners to put a bailout pot in, or does it get to the stage where they just tighten the financial restraints even further, thus protecting the greedy 6, making it harder for teams like Newcastle and Aston Villa to succeed and to get to where they want to be, and then the Saudis do get bored and sell up and fuck off. But let us know in the comments below what you think about Gary Neville's comments and Richard Keys' comments, for what it's worth, and PSR and FFP as well. Are you sick of it? Do you think it needs to be adapted or scrapped altogether? I don't know what the Premier League are going to do, if anything, with it. They seem to be quite happy with it, screwing clubs over in favour of the big greedy 6 clubs. But love to hear what you got to say, guys. Drop a comment. We'll do our best to reply. Keep it above the belt. No need for nastiness. If you're a prick, you'll get the flick. I flicked a couple the other day. I'm a man of my word, as a joker would say. But if you like this kind of a thing, subscribe. Help us grow. Get us to 9K. We've got a belter prize to give away. The retro Blue McEwen's Newcastle United shirt. That could be yours. If you get us to 9K and then comment on the 9K video, you could be in it to win it. Have a belter. We'll see you on What's Going On later. Cheerio. Bye.